My brother Alex was labeled the dumb one in our family for years. Mom and Dad never missed a chance to remind him how he'd never amount to anything, especially compared to me, their gifted daughter. The day Alex got his medical school acceptance letter, he cried for hours. Not from joy, but because our parents somehow turned even that moment into another opportunity to tear him down. Affirmative action, Dad sneered. They must have needed to fill a quota. That was the last straw for me. So when Alex finished med school at the top of his class and asked me to help plan his wedding, I made sure our parents wouldn't be there to ruin his day too. What they didn't know was that I'd been documenting their abuse for years, and I was finally ready to show everyone exactly who they really were. The fallout was nuclear, but watching my brother walk down the aisle without their shadow hanging over him, worth every burning bridge. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, our family looked perfect from the outside. Dad was a successful corporate lawyer, Mom ran her interior design business, and we lived in a beautiful colonial home with a perfectly manicured lawn, the kind of place where neighbors dropped by with homemade apple pie and kids played street hockey until dusk. But behind our glossy front door, a different reality existed. From early on, our parents established a clear hierarchy between Alex and me. I was 3 years older, a straight-A student who breezed through advanced classes and collected academic awards. My parents showcased my achievements to everyone, framing certificates, displaying trophies, bringing up my accomplishments at every dinner party. Emma's going to be somebody, they'd beam. Alex, meanwhile, struggled with undiagnosed dyslexia until middle school. Reading was torture for him. Math problems reduced him to tears, and his report cards became battlegrounds. Dad would wave them in his face during dinner. D in English? Are you even trying, or are you just stupid? Mom wasn't much better, sighing dramatically while telling him, "Some people just aren't meant for academics, sweetie. Maybe you could learn a trade?" I remember one Thanksgiving when I was 15 and Alex was 12. Our extended family gathered around our dining table, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Dad stood to give the traditional family toast, glass raised. To Emma's perfect SAT scores, Harvard material right here. Everyone clapped. Then he glanced at Alex and added, "And to Alex, who, well, he's trying his best with that C average. Maybe the community college will take him someday." The table fell silent. Cousin Jenna shot Alex a pitying look. Uncle Rob awkwardly cleared his throat. Alex stared at his plate, face flushed with humiliation. Another incident burned into my memory happened at Alex's 8th grade science fair. He'd worked for weeks on his project about cardiac functions, the first time I'd seen him genuinely excited about schoolwork. He'd built a working model of a heart with pumps and colored water to show blood flow. When we arrived at the school gymnasium, Mom immediately wandered off to admire other students' displays, while Dad checked his watch repeatedly, sighing about wasting a perfectly good Saturday. When the judges passed by Alex's table without much comment, Dad muttered, "Guess mediocrity runs in your blood, son." Alex's shoulders slumped. He didn't even stay for the award ceremony. What nobody in our family knew, what I kept secret for years, was that Alex had a gift they couldn't measure with standardized tests. Since childhood, he'd been fascinated by human anatomy. His room was filled with medical books he struggled to read but pored over for hours, memorizing diagrams. He volunteered at the local hospital every summer, and every night I'd find him studying biology or chemistry until 2 a.m., while our parents assumed he was playing video games. The summer before his senior year, Alex asked me to help him with his college applications. We worked in secret, late at night in my bedroom. I edited his essays, helped him prepare for interviews, and drove him to volunteer at free clinics in underserved neighborhoods. When acceptance letters started arriving, we hid them. Neither of us was ready for our parents' inevitable dismissal of his achievements. What Alex didn't know was that I'd been keeping evidence of our parents' emotional abuse for years. Voice recordings of their tirades, screenshots of cruel text messages, video clips taken discreetly during family discussions, a digital archive of every time they'd crushed his spirit, my insurance policy for when he finally broke free. And then came the day that changed everything. Alex's medical school acceptance letter from Johns Hopkins, one of the top programs in the country. Alex's medical school graduation fell on a perfect May weekend. Cherry blossoms lined Baltimore's streets, and the air felt electric with possibility. He'd spent 4 grueling years proving himself, graduating with honors and landing a residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the most competitive programs in the country. I flew in 3 days early to help him prepare for both the ceremony and the small engagement party he'd planned for afterward. His fiancée, Nisha, was a brilliant oncology researcher he'd met during his second year. They'd been together for 2 years, and I'd never seen my brother so happy. "Mom and Dad are coming tomorrow," Alex told me as we hung decorations in the small garden venue he'd rented for the party. His voice was tight, his movements mechanical. They actually RSVP'd. It had been almost 4 years since they'd seen him in person. 4 years of minimal contact after that disastrous day when his medical school acceptance arrived. They'd attended neither his white coat ceremony nor any of his academic achievements since. "Are you sure you want them here?" I asked carefully, watching his face. "They're still our parents, Em. Maybe seeing all this?" He gestured around at the graduation decorations, the congratulatory banner. "Maybe it'll finally be enough for them." I said nothing, but felt the familiar weight of my phone in my pocket, where years of documented abuse sat like a loaded gun. The next day, our parents arrived at Alex's apartment with the same energy they'd always brought into rooms. Dad immediately criticizing the neighborhood. "Pretty run down for a doctor, isn't it?" Mom touching surfaces as if checking for dust. They barely acknowledged Nisha beyond cool handshakes. During the pre-graduation family brunch, the tension built steadily. Dad questioned Alex about the real doctors who had taught him, implying his professors must have been second-rate. Mom picked at her food while asking Nisha pointed questions about her family's background. "So your parents are from India? First generation here? How interesting." Her tone made the word sound like an insult. I watched Alex's knuckles whiten around his fork, saw Nisha's smile become increasingly fixed, but neither said anything. They were trying so hard to maintain peace. At the graduation ceremony itself, our parents sat stiffly in their seats while I cheered loudly enough for 3 people when Alex crossed the stage. Dad checked his emails throughout the ceremony. Mom clapped politely but without enthusiasm. "Dr. Alexander Mitchell," the dean announced, and I felt tears spring to my eyes. My little brother, the stupid one, now a doctor. After the ceremony, we gathered for photos. Alex in his regalia, beaming. Nisha looking at him with undisguised pride. Our parents stood awkwardly at the edges, as if unsure of their role in this tableau. "Maybe stand next to Alex, Dad," I suggested, camera raised. "Let's just get this over with," he muttered, moving into position with visible reluctance. The engagement party began at 6 that evening. Alex and Nisha had invited about 40 people, close friends from medical school, a few professors, Nisha's family, who had flown in from Chicago, and us. Nisha's parents were warm, effusive, clearly bursting with pride for both their daughter and her chosen partner. "Your son is extraordinary," Mrs. Patel told my mother, touching her arm warmly. "Such compassion in his care. The patients during his clinicals adored him." Mom smiled thinly. "He always was sensitive, sometimes too much so." The first real incident came during cocktail hour. Alex was across the room when Dad cornered one of the professors, Dr. Levine, who had been Alex's mentor. "So tell me honestly," I overheard Dad saying, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "how much did you have to help him? My son's never been academically inclined, if you know what I mean." Dr. Levine looked confused. "Alex, he's one of the most promising students I've had in decades. His research on pediatric cardiac anomalies is being published next month. Dad laughed dismissively. There must be some mistake. We're talking about Alexander Mitchell, about this tall, kind of soft-spoken. Yes, your son, Dr. Levine said firmly. He's brilliant. Surely you know that. Dad's face darkened. He mumbled something and walked away. The situation deteriorated further during dinner. Nisha's father stood to give a toast, his voice warm with emotion. When our daughter brought Alex home to meet us, I knew immediately he was special. Not just because of his intelligence, which is considerable, but because of his heart. He listens, truly listens, and cares deeply. These are the qualities that make not just a good doctor, but a good man. We welcome him into our family with open arms and full hearts. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone except our parents, who exchanged a look I recognized too well. The one that said they were the only sane people in a room full of fools. Then Alex stood, visibly nervous but determined. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This journey wasn't always easy, but it was made possible by those who believed in me. His eyes found Nisha, then me, then Dr. Levine. Conspicuously, he didn't look at our parents. And I have an announcement, he continued. Nisha and I have set our wedding date for October. We hope you'll all be there to celebrate with us. Applause broke out. Glasses clinked. But a few seats away, I heard Mom whisper to Dad, just loud enough for those nearby, October? Rushing it, aren't they? Wonder if she's pregnant. It would explain why she's settling for. I didn't hear the rest because the blood was rushing too loudly in my ears. Across the table, I saw that Alex had heard too. For a split second, his face crumpled before he composed himself. That was the moment I knew. After years of documenting, waiting, protecting my evidence, the time had come. I felt strangely calm as I stood up, phone in hand, and walked to the small stage where a microphone stood. The party chatter died down as I stepped onto the small stage. Alex shot me a questioning look. This wasn't part of the evening's program. I smiled reassuringly at him while connecting my phone to the venue's sound system. For those who don't know me, I'm Emma, Alex's sister, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I've had the privilege of watching my brother grow from a curious kid who could name every bone in the human body by age 10 into the exceptional doctor standing before you today. Warm smiles spread through the room. Nisha squeezed Alex's hand. But not everyone has appreciated this journey, I continued, my gaze finding our parents. Dad was already scowling, Mom shifting uncomfortably in her seat. In fact, some people in this room have spent years telling Alex he was worthless, stupid, and destined for failure. An uncomfortable hush fell over the gathering. Alex's eyes widened with realization. Emma, he said quietly, don't. I'm sorry, Alex, but I can't stay silent anymore. I turned back to the audience. Our parents have emotionally abused my brother his entire life. They've undermined every achievement, sabotaged his confidence, and tried to convince him, and everyone else, that he was somehow less than. Mom stood up abruptly. This is inappropriate. Emma, stop this right now. No, Mom. For once, you're going to listen. I tapped my phone screen. 4 years ago, when Alex received his acceptance to Johns Hopkins Medical School, this was our father's response. Dad's voice filled the room, crystal clear from the recording. Affirmative action case if I ever saw one. They probably needed to fill their quota of charity cases. Don't get your hopes up, son. You'll wash out by first semester. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nisha's parents exchanged horrified glances. Dr. Levine's face hardened. And here's Mom when Alex made the dean's list his first year. Another tap, another recording. Well, the standards must be slipping. Or maybe you're cheating. That would make more sense than you suddenly becoming smart. Alex had gone completely still, his face pale. Nisha wrapped her arm protectively around his shoulders. I have 4 years of these recordings, I said, my voice now trembling slightly. 4 years of documented emotional abuse. And that's just what I captured after I started recording. It doesn't include the lifetime of humiliation before that. I looked directly at my parents. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Mom was frantically gathering her purse. You two have spent decades trying to convince Alex he was worthless, when in reality, he is extraordinary. Not just academically, not just professionally, but as a human being. He succeeded not because of you, but despite you. I turned to address Alex directly now. I know you invited them here hoping for reconciliation, hoping they'd finally see your worth. But people who can't recognize your brilliance and kindness don't deserve to be part of your life, and they certainly don't deserve to be at your wedding. The room was so quiet, you could hear the ice melting in drinks. My parents stood frozen in social humiliation, the very thing they had always feared most, their carefully cultivated image now in tatters. "How dare you?" Dad finally sputtered, pointing a shaking finger at me. "After everything we've done for you both." "Done for us?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean like telling your 12-year-old son he was too stupid to ever succeed? Or suggesting to everyone at his engagement party that his fiancée must be pregnant to explain why she'd settle for him? Is that what you've done for us?" Nisha gasped. Her parents rose to their feet, outrage clear on their faces. Dad grabbed Mom's elbow. "We're leaving. This is absurd." "Yes, you are leaving," I agreed, "and you won't be attending the wedding either. The invitations I helped Alex design, they're not coming your way." Mom looked at Alex imploringly. "Alex, surely you don't agree with this ambush? We're your parents." For a breathless moment, the room waited. Alex slowly stood up, his doctor's hands steady even as his voice wavered. "Biology made you my parents," he said quietly, "but you never acted like it. Emma's right. You're not welcome at my wedding, or in my life, not unless you can acknowledge what you've done and make genuine amends." Dad's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful." "Dad," Alex interrupted, his voice gaining strength, "I graduated top of my class at one of the best medical schools in the country. I'm starting my residency at Mass General next month. I'm marrying an incredible woman who loves me. Your opinion of me no longer matters." A few people began to applaud softly, then more joined in, until the room filled with supportive applause. My parents looked around wildly, suddenly understanding they had no allies here. Without another word, they stormed out, the door slamming behind them with theatrical finality. I stepped down from the stage, legs suddenly weak. Had I gone too far? Ruined Alex's special day? But before I could spiral into doubt, Alex was there, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for saying what I never could." The aftermath was both simpler and more complex than I'd imagined. After my parents stormed out, there was a moment of stunned silence before Dr. Levine approached Alex. "I had no idea," he said, gripping Alex's shoulder. "Your research, your patient care, knowing what you were carrying makes your achievements even more remarkable." Others followed, classmates, professors, Nisha's family, each expressing support and often sharing their own stories of family struggles. What I'd feared would be a ruined celebration transformed into something more authentic, a gathering where masks had fallen away. Later that night, after guests had gone, Alex, Nisha, and I sat in their apartment living room, emotionally exhausted. "I should have asked you first," I said, nursing a glass of wine. "It was your graduation, your engagement party." Alex shook his head. "If you had asked, I probably would have said no. I've spent my whole life avoiding confrontation with them." He looked at his hands. But once it happened, it felt like breathing for the first time. Nisha took his hand. "Your parents called while you were talking to Dr. Levine," she admitted. "They said horrible things, threatened to tell everyone the truth about you." "What truth?" I scoffed. "Exactly," Nisha said with a small smile. There is no truth except the one we all witnessed. Your brother is brilliant, compassionate, and deserved better parents. The next morning brought the expected barrage. Text messages, voicemails, even emails to Alex's university account. Our parents alternated between rage and manipulation. We were ungrateful, mentally unstable, had misrepresented everything, were breaking their hearts. Classic Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Block them, Nisha advised, and Alex did. I expected to feel guilt or remorse, but instead felt lightness. For years, I'd carried the weight of those recordings, the responsibility of witnessing Alex's abuse while planning some eventual reckoning. Now that burden was gone. 2 weeks later, as Alex and Nisha prepared to move to Boston for his residency, an unexpected visitor knocked on their door. Our mother's sister, Aunt Caroline. I saw the videos, she said without preamble when Alex opened the door. Videos? He asked, confused. She looked at me. The recordings Emma made. Your mother's been showing them to family members, trying to prove they were taken out of context. She shook her head. But they weren't, were they? If anything, they confirmed what I've suspected for years. Over coffee, Aunt Caroline revealed what we'd never known. Our father had grown up with a brilliant older brother who died young of leukemia. Grandfather had idolized the lost son and found his surviving son wanting in comparison. It doesn't excuse what they did to you, she said firmly, but your father repeated the pattern he lived through. And your mother? She sighed. Helen always needed to believe she married someone perfect. Acknowledging your father's cruelty would have shattered that illusion. Before leaving, Aunt Caroline handed Alex a small box. Your grandmother's wedding band. She always said it should go to her grandson's bride. I've been keeping it safe. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Some family is worth keeping, Alex. I hope I'm among them. That night, Alex called me. I'm making you my best person, he said. Not just for the wedding, for life. Planning the October wedding became a joy without our parents' interference. Nisha's family embraced Alex completely, insisting on incorporating elements from both their backgrounds, his Scottish heritage and her Indian traditions, into the ceremony. Meanwhile, the family grapevine hummed. Cousins, aunts, and uncles reached out one by one, many admitting they'd witnessed our parents' behavior over the years but hadn't known how to intervene. Some sent regrets for their silence. Others shared similar experiences. A few, loyal to our parents, cut contact. Family isn't just DNA, Alex told me as we reviewed the final guest list. It's who shows up, who sees you. The revelation that stunned me most came from my college roommate, Bethany. I need to tell you something, she said during a pre-wedding lunch. Your mom called me sophomore year, asking if you were covering for Alex cheating in school. What? I nearly choked on my water. She said if I knew anything about Alex having someone else take his tests or write his papers, I should tell her, because enabling him would only hurt him in the long run. Bethany looked ashamed. I told her I didn't know anything about Alex's schoolwork, which was true, but I should have told you. The depth of their sabotage was still revealing itself. Layers of undermining we'd never even suspected. A week before the wedding, a package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a vintage photo album I'd never seen before, with a note from our father's secretary, Marjorie. Found this while clearing old files. Thought you should have it. The album contained photos of Alex from birth through high school, winning a science fair in 4th grade, the one before the cardiac model, reading to elderly patients as a hospital volunteer, dissecting a frog with focused precision in biology class, photos our parents had apparently taken but never displayed, never acknowledged, evidence that they'd seen his passion and aptitude all along, but chosen to deny it. I debated showing Alex, but decided against it. Some wounds don't need reopening. The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, New England autumn at its finest. The ceremony would be held at a historic estate outside Boston, with just under 100 guests. Quality over quantity, as Alex put it. As I helped him adjust his tie in a quiet moment before the ceremony, he said, Do you think they'll try to show up? I shook my head. Security has their photos. And honestly, I don't think they will. That would require admitting they were wrong. He nodded, looking relieved. You know what's strange? I spent my whole life trying to earn their approval. Now that I've stopped trying, I'm happier than I've ever been. The ceremony was beautiful in its authenticity. Nisha, radiant in a fusion gown of white silk and gold embroidery. Alex, steady and joyful. Their vows, written themselves, spoke of building the family they chose, not the one they were born into. Standing beside my brother as he married the woman who truly saw him, I realized something profound. Sometimes, cutting people out isn't an act of cruelty, but of preservation. Like a surgeon removing diseased tissue to save the patient. In the reception that followed, surrounded by people who genuinely celebrated Alex and Nisha, the absence of our parents wasn't a void, but a relief. The dance floor filled with joy, untempered by criticism. Toasts rang with genuine admiration instead of backhanded compliments. During the father-daughter dance, Nisha danced with her dad while Alex pulled Aunt Caroline onto the floor. Later, for the mother-son dance, he chose me. Thank you, he whispered as we swayed to the music, not just for the recordings or the confrontation, for believing in me when no one else did. I blinked back tears. I always knew who you really were, even when you didn't. Later that night, as sparklers illuminated the departing couple, I noticed Alex slip something into Nisha's hand. From the way her face softened, I knew it was grandmother's ring. Some family traditions, it seemed, were worth preserving after all. It's been 3 years since that wedding day. Alex is now chief resident at Mass General, specializing in pediatric cardiology. Nisha's research on cancer treatment protocols has been published in leading medical journals. They're expecting their first child next month, a girl they plan to name Caroline. Our parents have made no meaningful attempts at reconciliation. Last Christmas, Mom sent cards signed, "Your loving parents," as if nothing had happened. We returned them unopened. Dad apparently tells colleagues his son is a small-town doctor, rather than acknowledging Alex's position at one of the nation's top hospitals. Their pride remains more important than the truth. But family has a way of redefining itself when given the chance. Aunt Caroline hosts Thanksgiving now, gathering the branches of our family that chose connection over denial. Nisha's parents have become the loving parental figures Alex never had, calling weekly just to check in. My relationship with my brother has deepened into something unbreakable. Sometimes, standing up for someone you love means burning bridges you once thought were necessary. What I've learned is that those bridges often led nowhere worth going anyway. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. But more importantly, when you see someone being diminished, especially by those who should lift them up, speak out. Your voice might be the catalyst they need to finally break free. If my story resonates with you, remember that family is meant to be your foundation, not your prison. Blood may determine your relatives, but love and respect determine your family. Choose wisely who you allow to define your worth. Thanks for listening to my story. If it helped you or someone you know, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of people reclaiming their power. Share in the comments if you've ever had to make a difficult choice to protect yourself or someone you love. Sometimes, the most courageous act is simply walking away.